Hello, folks out there in internet world.
Going to do another episode of Ask the Tech. We're going to do a Tippmann 98 custom this week. It's been a highly requested gun, very popular. So go ahead and get to it.
Consider the AK-47 of the paintball markers.
Yeah, they're great. They work.
Use.
I cleaned one earlier today from a customer that it should not have worked, but
It had like rust in it, didn't it?
Yeah, it had rust, dried paint. It took me a bit to get it apart. It was nasty and still ran. So, just to talk to the reliability of the 98 custom, here is the one that we are going to take care of today. We're going to start to take the body halves apart to get to the inside. Going to need to loosen 2 screws on the ASA. Your ASA stands for air source adapter, so that's going to be where your tank screws into. Don't have to take those all the way out. We're just going to loosen them up a little bit. And then we've got our screws on the body halves that we are going to take out. With the 98s, this doesn't need to be done too often unless you're breaking paint and getting nastiness inside the gun. If it's not breaking paint, then
which is what cold weather.
Cold weather. These are not the gentlest on paint due to the way they work and the pressure that they operate at. So cold weather, they tend to break a lot of paint. But
not all the time.
Not all the time. It's like what we've had lately, below 30 degrees, just about any gun's going to be breaking paint. So if you're breaking paint, you got to take it apart and clean it. Other than that, they can go quite a while. But loosened all the screws, so now I'm going to pull the body halves apart. If you have problems getting the body halves apart, look at your velocity adjustment screw. It might be screwed out far enough that it is contacting the body. So turn that in a little bit, and that will take care of that. Once I get the screws loose, I like to start at the front, pry it loose until you get all the way inside. In here, this is your ball detent. This is what makes it so you only feed one ball at a time while you're shooting. This here is your main spring. This is what makes this hammer move back and forth. This particular gun is Tippmann's anti-chop, so it has a second spring here. That makes it so that the hammer can go forward and the bolt can still go back. It's kind of stuck right now. We'll get that taken care of later. So we're going to take out our ball detent. This piece here that was sitting here, this is our sear. This is what catches the hammer. So we're going to take that out. Take out one of our springs. We're going to take out our other trigger spring. Take out our trigger. Take out all these little pins. Be careful when you take this apart. It's not uncommon for those little pins to pop out, and they like to fly random places and disappear. Up front, you've got another pin. This holds in your sight piece. It also locks your hopper into place. There's a little spring behind that. That's another piece that likes to pop out and disappear. Going to pull out the back plug. Pull out our main spring and our ACS spring. Then we are going to rotate this, take out our connecting rod. This connects our bolt to our hammer. Pull the hammer back, take all this beautifulness apart, and this particular gun, that piece is stuck, and that's why the ACS isn't working. So we get it right there. Now it's all better, it's all fixed. It was just stuck in place. Pull our bolt out. This is normally about as far as you need to get it to clean it. This is your power tube to get underneath the front edge. What I normally do is you take your handy dandy rag. I will slide it underneath the front part of the power tube and slide it back like that, and then just pull it back and forth a bit, and that usually does a pretty good job of getting the paint out from underneath. For some reason, if that doesn't do enough, if you flip this over, you've got these two screws here. Those two screws will hold your power tube in place. Take those out and your power tube will pop out. You can see on the Tippmann 98 Custom, there are a bunch of cutouts inside the grip frame. These are for additions such as a response trigger or an electronic trigger kit. So they have all the cutouts in the frame, so all you have to do is buy the kit and it goes in. This is one of the more highly customizable guns on the market, especially at its price point. Here is our hammer. This O-ring on the hammer, if you pull your trigger and the gun fires multiple times or sound like it's going full auto, this is most often the issue. Change that O-ring and oil it, and that will normally fix your issues with that. Let me grab some oil. Here we have an old bottle of Tippmann oil that we've used for a long time. It doesn't take much oil, just put a couple drops on it. Run your fingers around it to lube it up, and then set it into place. When you set it into place, there's like a little squared notch cut out. That needs to go towards the bottom. That is what catches to make the gun go pew pew. Now we're going to start putting our springs back in. We have our main drive spring. We'll go in after we put the cocking handle. Main drive spring. Then we have our anti-chop system. That's going to slide in there. Then we have our bumper. This is to make it so the gun doesn't feel like it kicks quite as hard when you are shooting. If you don't have that, sometimes you'll get a little bit louder ping noise or a pop sound. On the back cap, you can see there's a whole bunch of holes. The drive spring is going to go in the middle, and then you have one that looks kind of out of place because it's farther out than the rest of them. That is going to be where your ACS spring goes. You push that forward, sit in the little grooves in the body. Now that's in place. We're going to take our bolt. Your bolt, you don't need to oil it or anything. Make sure it is clean and dry. Set it on the front of the power tube. And we're going to take our connecting rod, put it in the bolt and in the hammer. Taking a look to see why the ACS isn't working like it's supposed to right now. With these, it's very important to be patient while you are putting them together. If you are not, then they have a tendency to not want to go together correctly, and then you end up with a gun that doesn't shoot properly. There we go. This is how your anti-chop works. When the gun cocks, this pulls back, and then paint feeds through this hole here. Normally it will drop in, the bolt will go forward, put the ball in the barrel, air will come out of your power tube and shoot it. If a ball happens to misfeed, it will catch it, still allow the hammer to go forward, and then shoot. It just won't fire the paintball, it won't chop it. So that is a great addition to have. especially if you don't have a force-fed hopper or an electronic hopper. So now let's get to the rest of the parts. We got to get all our nice little pins. In here, you can see there are holes. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then for pins, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That one's separate because it goes up front. Don't worry about that little guy. We're going to start putting our pins into all of these locations. Then you have your trigger. Your trigger is going to sit up front on the 2 forward pins with your trigger return spring. That's going to go up front. There's a little notch for it. So when you pull your trigger, pushes it back forward so you can shoot. Next piece, we have our sear. Make sure that your sear is nice and clean and free of grease, otherwise it's going to have issues recocking. Our sear, you've got 3 pins left. The sear is going to go on the farthest one back, and the front part of it is going to go between those 2 pins. Set that in place. And then here is our sear spring. That is going to go pushed into the back side of the sear. And there's a little lip for it. Push that bad boy into place. He doesn't want to stay right now. He's being complicated. So that is your trigger mechanism of the Tippmann 98. This is a little sight piece that you have. It's not needed for the gun to work or anything. It's more cosmetic. For the front part now, for our latch, you've got your pin. Put your pin in. Set your spring into place. And then getting this little guy to latch is not always the most fun. But what I normally do first is I'll put it on the back and then kind of work it around until it sits on the spring, and then push it through the lip until it catches right here. When you go to put the body halves together, it doesn't take much for that to break loose, so be careful. And we're going to put our ball detent in. It needs to go, you can see there's like a little flap piece and a little opening. Right here, this needs to go forward so it'll stop extra paint from feeding. And because these are so fun sometimes and the springs like to pop out, our sear popped out again. I'll drop that back into place. Put your spring back in. So there's the internals of our Tippmann 98 Custom. So we're going to put our trigger guard back in. These came out in the other half of the body. Trigger guard and safety. Everything's in place, all good to go. Now we are going to put our halves back together. When you put the halves back together, I like to push on the front first to help keep that latch into place, and then push down on the back. It should all pop into place. Once it does that, I normally put in the screw by the trigger guard and then cock it. And it looks like our sear popped out of place again. So we're going to take that screw back out. Spread these apart again. And yeah, our sear decided not to stay in place. This is why you have to be really patient with these. It's not uncommon for little springs and stuff to pop out of place while you're putting it back together. Again, everything's back together. I like to go through a checklist in my head, so we'll do the latch, the detent, and then our springs. If you don't do that, it's not uncommon to start forgetting pieces, get the gun back together, and then realize your detent is sitting on the table in front of you. So again, line up the body halves. spring popped out. Get our latch spring back in, latch back on, that back into place, our ASA back into place. It's just 2 nuts that sit in the grip frame. Line up the body halves, snap everything back into place. Again, tighten the screw and test it to make sure things work. This gun is also new and hasn't been shot, so some of the springs are tighter and things are not cooperating very well. I'm going to blame that on Chad because he's looking over my shoulder while I'm doing it.
We'd never do that, Ron.
The color commentary is what's causing it.
Oh, not that again. Do you need that extra finger?
Teamwork. There you go, gun cocks, pull the trigger and it shoots. So now we put in the rest of our screws.
You said Cox.
These guns aren't overly complicated, but as you can see, there's lots of little pieces that don't always like to line up. So if you're going to take it apart, take your time. Hopefully this video helps. If so, watch it while you're taking your gun apart.
You can also check us out on the YouTube channel.
Yep, this will also be...
The Facebook page, the Facebook Live can be kind of choppy.
So
yeah, make sure you share this video with your friends, anybody that plays. And then, like Chad mentioned, we are also on the YouTubes. We post all our videos on YouTube, and then the field itself also posts a video every Wednesday. So here you go. There's Tippmann 98. Cock it. Pull the trigger. Make sure your latch works. Tippmann 98 Custom. Great gun. Feel free to ask us any questions. Go ahead and call us. Check us out at madcowpaintball.com.
And if you have a marker or hopper or mask or any paintball attire that you'd like to get checked out a little more in depth with, please let us know in the comments section or go ahead and send us a message.
Or feel free to come on out to Mad Cow Paintball. We are open every Saturday from 10 until 7 and every Sunday from 10 until 5. I am here pretty much all the time, so if you ever have any questions, you can ask myself, or we have other techs on site too.
Let's put another Light Snack Productions. I gotta wait.
Now we're done streaming, right?